teleprompter?
That's very good. I would have come bounding up the stairs like you see the politicians do, but I haven't had my Advil, so I couldn't do that. I'm going to start today by asking you to think about something. Why did your ancestors come here? That's correct. It wasn't the healthcare system. It wasn't free prescription drugs. It wasn't the glorious public education system. It wasn't to get on Social Security. It wasn't for guaranteed employment or wages. My guess is that most everybody out there had ancestors that came to this country for two things. They wanted freedom and they wanted opportunity. And they weren't promised anything. There were no guarantees. All they were going to have once they got here was just a chance to be somebody, a chance to make it big possibly, a chance to give their children and grandchildren opportunities that they had never had, opportunities that they certainly would not have had they stayed in the country that they came from. Those folks turned out to be pretty good ancestors, and that is really important. In fact, a guy named Jonas Salk once said, the best thing we can ever aspire to is to be a good ancestor. It may surprise you, but I know a lot about the people that are in this crowd today. I know a whole lot about your lineage. If your parents or grandparents or great-grandparents, or even further back than that, came across the ocean to Virginia, I know that you come from pretty solid stock. I know that your ancestors had courage. I know that your ancestors were risk takers. I know that many of them were rebels in the truest sense of the word, who were always willing to question authority. Many of you come from families that have been in this part of the country for many years. So you're Southerners, or even better than that, you're Virginians. There are undoubtedly people in this crowd today who had ancestors that fought in the Army of Northern Virginia. There are undoubtedly people here that can proudly say that my great-grandfather was in Stonewall Jackson's foot cavalry. Perhaps you had a father or grandfather who went onto the beaches of Normandy, or who raced across Europe with General Patton, or who perhaps never came back from Okinawa. Now, why did they do that? And what does that say about you? Well, they did that because they wanted to be good ancestors. They were willing to die if it took that, because they understood it was their turn to step up to the plate so that you could be free and so that you could have a future. And what does this say about you? Well, it says that you have that in your genes. It says it is in the blood that runs through your veins. It is in the marrow of your bones. You will stand and fight to preserve liberty and pass that along to your children and your grandchildren. But let's talk about the current environment for a minute. For a number of months now, we've been bombarded with news coming out of Washington. And at some point, we have to start listening to that evening news or reading the daily paper and asking ourselves, what is the common denominator to all this? What is it that we're really being told? The federal government takes over our banks, takes over our insurance companies, takes over our investment houses, fires CEOs of private companies, takes over car companies. The federal government ignores bankruptcy law. It has legislation before Congress, cap and trade, that would ultimately affect the prices of every good and every service that's offered in this country. The federal government wants to nationalize your health care. The federal government has decided to ignore years and years and years of contract law. And the Obama administration killed the DC school voucher program that once allowed socioeconomically distressed families at least to have a chance of getting an education for their children instead of going to the failed public school system in DC. So what is the common denominator to each of these efforts? As Doc just mentioned, I host a monthly coalition meeting in Richmond, and last week we had a woman named Professor Regina Hertzlinger. Regina was the first woman ever to be tenured at the Harvard Business School. And she came to our meeting to talk about the health care proposal that's currently before Congress. Regina did a pretty good job of just eviscerating the health care proposal. And I don't think there was anybody that would have even considered it once they left that room, even if they came into the room promoting it. But as I sat there and listened to her, I came up with that same thought. You know, why are we even considering this? And as I walked her to her car after the meeting was over, I said, Professor Hertzlinger, I said, you know, this has been tried in other countries. It has not worked. This has been tried in several of the states. And within a period of months, the states were sinking so much money into it that they either had to alter the program or just repeal it. I said, why in the world does anybody think